Welcome to the Short Horror Beercast. This is Season 2, Episode 2. We are covering Cool Air by the wonderful H.P. Lovecraft. I don't know what kind of voice that is, but I'm going to use it for the rest of the show.
Then I gotta get going.
I'm Paul.
And I'm Alec.
We are going to start off with our beers because I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen. And this is the Beercast. We pair beers with horror stories. We're covering Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft, and I want to know what you got to go with Cool Air.
I told you yesterday I was not getting it, but last night I found one.
Okay, nice. Okay.
It's always that way with this show. I'm always like, there's no way, dude. There's no beers out there. Oh, I found one. Hold on.
Yep. Trust in serendipity every so often.
Right. So, okay, this is from Arbor Brewing Company.
Okay.
And it's called Cold Excursion IPA.
Nice.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad. Let's see here. It says it's established in 1995 and it's 6.4 ABV.
Nice.
It says it's got, I feel like this, it's got bright and heavy notes.
Yeah.
Of pine and citrus with a crisp finish.
Beautiful.
So we'll see how this one goes down. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm about to.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you? What'd you get?
Okay, so by the way, Cold Excursion, that would have gone well also if we were covering At the Mountains of Madness.
Oh, I bet. That would have been perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal.
Oh, it's pretty good.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Taste. Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, it's really good.
Okay. What's the style again?
IPA.
Oh, it's an IPA? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay, good. All right, so like you, of course, having a lot of trouble. And here's the conclusion I came to is that we both know that it's pretty easy to find a beer online if you're just searching names and stuff like that. Very, very difficult to find stuff that is actually located near you. Okay, right. So I can find something that I was looking for. It would be perfect, but then like the guy down the block doesn't have it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I've come to the conclusion that what we have to do is just trust serendipity, like I said, and you just walk into your local beer distributor. If it's a good one, he'll have a lot of stuff, or she'll have a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you can usually find something if you're keeping your eyes open and your mind sharp.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I could find an Eisbock? Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of an Eisbock.
No.
Or Eisbock. It's Eisbock. It's a German beer, obviously. Eis is, German. Eis is German for ice. An Eisbock is a beer that they freeze and then they chip away the water ice, and what's left is like this concentrated alcohol, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they bottle that. Okay, and so I said, that would be wonderful. I could find it. Well, I can't find it anywhere near me. Okay, so I said, what the hell? So today at 12:36 p.m. exactly, I walk into my beer distributor and I'm looking around and I said, okay, you know what I'm going to get? I'm going to go thematic. I want something that excels when it's cold, when it is chilled, I should say. The beer is chilled,
mm-hmm.
which in my mind always translates to Pilsner. I always like a nice ice cold Pilsner.
Right.
And I said, now there are plenty of breweries in New York, which is where this story takes place. I found a nice Brooklyn brewery because there's nothing in Manhattan really, but Brooklyn has a lot of great breweries. So I'll find one of those. Okay. So I walk into the distributor and I find 6 Point Brewery, which is right out of Brooklyn. And they have a beer called The Crisp. It's a Pilsner, The Crisp Pils. And I said, okay, perfect. That's what I'm going to get. So I grabbed that. I turn around and staring me right in the face is an Eisbock.
Yep.
It's a German Eisbock called Smoke and Ice. And it's by Freigeist Bierkultur. And they did a collab with Goose Island. Goose Island's from Illinois. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, I was very happy. I bought both.
Just went for both. That's great.
I was so happy until I opened it and took a sniff. And then I was much less happy when I took a sip of it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It tastes like basically all-encompassing negativity all around. And now it's been open for a little while here. I've let it sit, and the warmth isn't doing it any good at all.
It's not doing you any favors.
No, it's not doing me any favors at all.
Oh, that's a drag.
Yeah, it smells like a leper's tomb, basically. And
now which one is the ice beer? This
is the Eisbock.
And it's shit.
You remember the basement and down there?
Yes.
Imagine a piece of wet cardboard sitting down in that basement. That's what it smells like.
Oh, dude, that's a drag.
Yeah. It tastes like a bad first date.
Are you going to muscle your way through it or what?
No. No, I poured myself a 6-point crisp pills, and
Attaboy.
it is just beautiful.
Chalk it up as learning.
Exactly. So, and it's a 5.4% ABV. It's perfect for a nice, just, slogging away for the story. It's good.
Yeah, I remember that beer that I had up north, that soft parade that was made of 1,000 different berries.
That's
I was
right.
like, nope, I'm not drinking this.
Not going to happen.
Mm-mm.
And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful Pilsner, and it smells like a great Pilsner, and it doesn't smell like the breath of a bilge rat the way this ice pot does.
Oh, that's rough. It's the beer equivalent of Surströmming. Have you ever seen that?
Wait, what is that again? I know this word. What is it again?
The word, it's this crazy, I think it's Norwegian or maybe Icelandic, I don't know, but
okay.
Canned fish. But it's not just fish, it's all the guts and some bones, and it's the most gnarly thing ever. And there's videos of people just trying to open it because it's so fermented inside that the can is like bulging out. Like it's about to explode. There's so much methane in there.
Yeah, I can. That's probably,
and it just they open it and they just start throwing up.
Oh.
They just start puking on everything near them. They're just crying. They're like, they can't deal.
I think this guy I used to follow on YouTube called Ordinary Sausage. I don't know if I ever just showed you any of these videos. This guy, all he does is make sausages, but he'll
wait a minute. Yeah, you did.
Did I?
Yeah, and he made one out of something god awful.
Malort. He used Jepson's Malort. And so, and I think he used that Surströmming. If that's how you pronounce
I bet he did. Did he make it through?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Because people lose their minds because you have to open it and it does this big hiss the minute you open it. And that's when and it sprays out like crazy and everyone loses their minds. They're like, that's the worst thing I ever smelled. I got to get the hell out of here. The ozone
just burns away right over your head.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's gross. I'm never trying it. I have a huge, easy to trip off gag reflex. And that would send me around the bend. There's no way I could do that.
So Mr. Lovecraft probably wouldn't like that either,
Right. Exactly. No, I don't think he'd be a fan of this Surströmming.
No. Oof. Anyway, so
gross.
Beautiful crisp pills.
Yeah, good for you. Glad you found a good backup.
I am too, to be honest with you. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
Cool Air was written in 1927. Bill Bryson wrote a whole book about the summer of 1927. Apparently, it was just a year that was chock full of a bunch of really cool stuff. Lovecraft was 37 at the time. This story appeared in Tales of Magic and Mystery in 1928. It was submitted to Weird Tales, which was, by that point, was Lovecraft's home, pretty much. But it was rejected. The editor thought that the ending might invite some censorship. It's apparently a pretty hardcore ending, even for Weird Tales at that time. So this is another tale that deviates from the standard Lovecraft fare that people today associate with him. Okay, there's no elder gods or anything like that. There's no real cosmic horror. I said the music of Eric Zahn was a tale that deviated from the normal Lovecraft thing. This one even more so. This is just like a standalone horror story. Nothing of the so-called Cthulhu mythos. So this is just a straight up creepy, weird tale. So I want to talk for a second about that word weird. Okay, there's actually a genre, the weird tale. Basically, I would say that anything that is invoking, or I should say evoking, a horror emotion, okay, or a horror response out of an audience. But you can't point to anything specifically horror related about the story, okay? And what's a good example of that would be like a tale like Friction would be a weird tale. Okay. So it's nothing that's really like that saying, like, it's not getting under your skin. You're not going to go to bed that night thinking, oh my God, this is like dreadful, and you're not reading this thing being like, oh my God, I'm afraid to put this book down. This is making me afraid to just be alive right now. It's nothing like that. Okay. It's not like The Exorcist. The Exorcist is straight up horror. Okay. A tale like Friction is a weird tale. Okay. And really what it is like, I think Harlan Ellison said it's taking the mirror of reality and turning it slightly, which is a pretty decent way of explaining it. Yeah. So you think that the Twilight Zone writers, okay, they were writing sort of weird tales, but Lovecraft specialized in the weird tale. Often he does venture into straight up horror, but a lot of times it's this thing that's sort of it's just weird. There are things that are just happening that you're like, this is not normal right now. It's a bit like, trying to explain a Yiddish word right now, by saying what is weird, what is the weird tale? What is the weird tale genre? It's very hard to say what it actually is. You just have to point to stories and say, that's a weird tale. That's a weird tale. Just pick up any old issue of Weird Tales magazine and you'll find weird tales in them. So anyway, Lovecraft was, he excelled in the weird tale, and he wound up influencing just every writer. Like I said in the last episode, every horror writer that we love, he's their grandfather. Mm-hmm. He was a letter hack. He wrote more words and letters than he did in fiction. He had a core group of pen pals that he traded letters back and forth with pretty regularly. This was known as the Lovecraft Circle. The Lovecraft Circle expanded beyond this core group to include writers who would go on to be featured right here on the Short Horror Beercast, Fritz Leiber being one of them. Another one was the great Robert Bloch. We're going to cover one of his stories later on. He went on to write hundreds of short stories, but he's perhaps best known for being the author of Psycho.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then obviously there are others. There's Robert E. Howard, who wrote the Conan stories. Clark Ashton Smith, August Derleth is another one. All these names just keep cropping up. And especially all these authors that we cover here, you'll see these names crop up in their lists of influences and stuff like that. So it's impossible to just overstate the influence that this little impoverished pulp writer had on an entire genre of writers. It's pretty incredible.
Wow.
You can't find any recordings of Lovecraft's voice. This is just a side note. There's no recordings of his voice. I don't even think anything of him on film. There's just still photographs. They say that he had sort of a nasally voice, sort of like, I don't know, you can't picture it.
Interesting.
But I was thinking he's from Rhode Island, so he probably sounded a little bit like Peter Griffin.
That's a good one.
I love a letter to Robert E. Howard. Yeah.
Oh, you've been saving that one. That's a good Peter Griffin.
I was complaining about all the blacks in the neighborhood. Yeah. Worship Cthulhu.
Good.
I feel better now. Okay. So I'm going to take a sip of my beer and let's get into it. So we open with a broken fourth wall.
You ask me to explain why I am afraid of a draft of cool air, why I shiver more than others upon entering a cold room, and seem nauseated and repelled when the chill of evening creeps through the heat of a mild autumn day. There are those who say I respond to cold as others do to a bad odor, and I am the last to deny the impression. What I will do is to relate the most horrible circumstance I ever encountered, and leave it to you to judge whether or not this forms a suitable explanation of my peculiarity.
So right away, we get that nice tone setting. It almost reminds me of the opening to the Telltale Heart. I don't know if you remember that one where...
I remember the story, but not exactly how it opens.
It opens with the guy saying something like, yeah, I'm nervous. I've always been nervous, but why do you say that I'm mad? He's addressing the audience. So he's going to explain himself throughout the rest of the story. And by the way, the spelling of the word odor is O-D-O-U-R.
Right.
HPL was an Anglophile of the highest order.
I guess so.
Yeah, he was always using those spellings and stuff like that.
And if he called herbs.
Herbs. Wrapped them in aluminium.
Yep. And kept them in the garage.
Right. Anyway, so after this, we get a little backstory of what we're actually talking about here. The narrator has found himself in New York City, having been relocated there for some, quote, dreary and unprofitable magazine work. He's unable to secure any decent lodgings and has been hopping from boarding house to boarding house. Finally, he comes upon a place that suits his fancy well enough. It's a 4-story brownstone done in the 19th century classical style, and it's run by a woman named Herrero.
Yep.
We're going to discuss Mrs. Herrero.
Yeah.
Because I can see her being cast in the film to be played by Speedy Gonzalez.
That's what I thought when I read it too. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah, he's going full Dickens with just writing out the dialect.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy, but it's funny. This is what I was talking about the last time, is that you can point to anything and say, well, that's this guy's racism. I really do think that was a sign of the times, that everybody was just like, yeah, that's how these people talk, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write it out like this. So
it's not like, how could you? I've read this many times before where people try and sound it out. Stephen King does it all the time.
Oh, he does. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I've read so much of his stuff and thought, I could probably fake a New England accent if I had to.
Right.
Because of how much of his I've read.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just the way he spelled things out.
Yeah. It's like Dickens with the Cockney accent. Dickens would spell out phonetically what the Cockney characters were saying in his stories. And it's a little off-putting when you're reading it. It's just like, wow, why? But it must have been just, it's a fashionable thing to do here and there. You know, I personally am not that big a fan of that.
You're right, though. When you read this story out loud, it sounds like Speedy Gonzales.
It does.
It's silly.
Yeah, it is silly. So, but whatever. He's not malicious with his characterization of her. That's as far as he goes. So we'll cut him some slack there. Yeah. So anyway, the narrator's happy with the place, and he's pretty much left alone by his fellow tenants. He's there for about 3 weeks when the first odd incident occurs. He hears something splatter on the floor right above him. And then he realizes he's been smelling ammonia for quite some time. He looks up at the ceiling and it's dripping. He rushes to tell the landlady and she freaks out. She goes scrabbling up the stairs, explaining that it is her tenant, Dr. Munoz, that lives up there. That's who's responsible for this, Dr. Munoz. She tells him in her flawless English that the doctor keeps to himself. He does all his own housekeeping and it's because he's very sick. I think he says, he's very sick. I think that's how she says it. He's apparently got some rare disease that makes him unable to tolerate heat. He's been bringing in all this ammonia to run cooling machines. I'm not sure exactly when refrigeration started, like real...
I don't know.
Refrigeration, yeah, I should have had this prepared.
If you don't mind a little keyboard noise, I'll look it up.
Go for it. Go for it. Alexa, when does refrigeration start? Adding refrigerator to your Amazon shopping list.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, the late 1920s.
Okay, that tracks.
Yeah, it says, in the late 1920s, refrigerators started to see an increased popularity in private homes. Home refrigeration became even more widespread in the 30s, following the introduction of Freon.
Yes.
A safer alternative to toxic gases previously used in vapor compression.
Like, I guess, ammonia.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
cool.
So, well, you could actually say in the 30s.
Yeah, all right, that's great.
I mean, it was in private homes in the late 20s, but 30s it was widespread.
Widespread. Okay, great. Okay, so
That's my answer.
That's great, and we love it. So that tracks because the story is 1927. He's in this little dinky brownstone in Manhattan. So so he's been bringing in all this ammonia to run his cooling machines, his pre-widespread refrigeration cooling machines. The landlady tells our narrator that Dr. Munoz has all these bottles of chemicals and shit up there. Okay, he never goes out, only up onto the roof. That's the only time he ever goes out. Her son actually brings him his food and takes out his laundry, runs errands and so forth. Okay, so he was, though, she says, one time in his life, he once was a great man of medicine. And only just recently, he helped to mend a broken arm of somebody that came to see him. The narrator has this last bit in mind when he himself suffers a heart attack one day. He drags himself up to Munoz's room. Just imagine clutching his heart just all the way up the stairs, and he knocks on the door. The voice from inside asks him his name and his business, and he tells him, and then the door opens and there's a rush of, wait for it, air. Okay? Don't you just love it when you're hit by the title of the story? He enters the room, and he's just surprised to see how well it's furnished, opposite of Eric Zahn. Eric Zahn's place was a shithole. Dr. Munoz, his place is beautiful. It's almost too good for this dump that they're living in. There are old paintings, there's lush decor, there's bookcases everywhere. It's the lodgings of a fine gentleman. Okay, this is HPL's kind of guy. He notices that the little bottles and stuff that the landlady referred to were merely part of a doctor's lab. That's all they were. And they were kept neatly off to the side in an adjoining room. So the narrator is really put off by the cold, so much so that it's actually distracting, okay? The man's handshake is cold, okay? Everything is really cold. It's a really hot day, and all this cold air on this really hot day, today we don't blink twice about air conditioning and really cold air conditioning, but back then it must have been pretty strange on a really hot day to be beset with just such freezing cold. So he says all this really cold air on this hot day is abnormal, and the abnormal, he says, quote, always excites aversion, disgust, and fear. I love that.
It's good.
Yeah, because those are the ingredients for horror right there.
Right.
Disgust plus fear and a threat. You combine those things into one threat. You got something there.
Yeah, that's it. That is the formula.
Yep. But all these reservations that he has dissipate once he sees the doctor in action. The guy's obviously a man of skill. He tends to the narrator as he expounds on his own philosophy of medicine. He's just, administering to him and just talking about this and that. He refers to himself as a sworn enemy of death, having devoted his life to conquering it. He lost all his money and his friends in the pursuit. So, the narrator gives us an interesting impression of the doctor's speech. He says it's soothing but strange. He can't even perceive breath flowing with the speech. Nevertheless, he is an eloquent speaker. He calms the narrator by saying a weak heart is nothing to worry about, for human will and consciousness are stronger than organic life. This is part of his philosophy. As a matter of fact, he says, with the right preparation and preservation, a body might go on retaining a, quote, nervous animation even without certain organs. He says, I can teach you how to live without a heart at all. And he says it sort of half in jest, but the guy's like, interesting. Munoz explains that he himself is afflicted with all kinds of ailments, and because of that, he has to keep to a strict regimen. And that includes keeping himself in constant cool temperature, around 55 to 56 degrees Fahrenheit. He's very precise about it. And that anything above that could kill him. So Munoz patches him up, and just like that, our narrator is a Munoz fanboy all of a sudden. He just loves this guy. He's able to cure him, and he feels great. And after that, he goes to visit him repeatedly for more healing sessions. While he's there, he notices that Munoz keeps all these ancient texts on his shelves. This is interesting because a Lovecraftian trope is the library with all the strange books on the shelves, and Lovecraft very often starts to go through them and talk about them, and they are usually a mix of real and fake books, the most famous of which is the Necronomicon. Okay, so he'll say like, he'll say among the ancient and flaking texts on the shelves were the Golden Bough by, I forget the guy's name, whatever, and whatever, the magic tomes of John Dee, all these things, and then the dreaded Necronomicon, So he'll list these books. It's very funny how he does that a few times in his stories. Doesn't do it here, though. He just says he just keeps all these ancient texts on these shelves, and that's that, To add to the weirdness, Munoz doesn't shy away from medieval incantations while he's ministering to our narrator. He believes these cryptic formulae to have effects on the human psyche that can't be overlooked, okay? They say when, fake healers, people, one of the reasons why they believe in fake healers is because of the atmosphere, okay? They'll put on the music, they'll burn the incense, they'll lay their hands on you, and you just that act alone, somebody laying their hands on you in a very caring fashion, just sort of excites all the the good vibes in you. Yeah. Yep. So there's something to be said for that. It's interesting. It's almost like the old Latin Mass, sitting in a Latin Mass, and you're not able to understand anything, but there's this guy up there reciting these incantations in Latin. They're archaic, they're weird, and they're echoing in this church. You can't help but be overcome by that. So it's all that stuff combined.
Sure.
So he listens to Munoz's tales of experiments and their, quote, ghastly results. God knows what they are. But Munoz tells him of his mentor, certain Dr. Torres of Valencia, who shared secrets with him during the great illness of 18 years before. Okay, that's important. Okay, we're going to put a pin in that. What was this great illness of 18 years before? Munoz says that this is when his own troubles began. He then becomes reticent. He doesn't want to talk about it. Just hints at some really wild methods of healing that his mentor taught him all those 18 years ago. Over time, Munoz starts getting a little weirder. Okay, this reminds me of Eric Zahn. As soon as the narrator came in contact with Eric Zahn, all of a sudden Eric Zahn over time starts getting a little weirder. The narrator came into his life right at the right time. Munoz starts to acquire a fondness for exotic spices and Egyptian incense, and his demand for cold air increases as well. The narrator, indebted to him, helps him modify his room so that eventually they get it down to 28 degrees. Munoz's neighbor starts complaining about the cold, so the narrator helps him hang a bunch of shit up for insulation. Munoz is starting to become morbid. He's talking of death constantly. But whenever the subject of a funeral or burial is brought up, he sort of laughs it off. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's talking about death, but he doesn't want to talk about his own death. Munoz's attitude is starting to become unbearable. The narrator describes him as a, quote, disconcerting and even gruesome companion.
I gotta hand it to the word gruesome. I love that word.
I love it too. Wonderful.
It's so good. I need to incorporate it more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a word you don't hear too much lately.
No, it's a great one too.
It is. So out of gratitude, our narrator can't bring himself to abandon the doctor. He's just, he helped him through his heart troubles. He's just indebted to him. So he bundles up, he helps him around the house. He's dusting, cleaning, he's running errands and fetching more chemicals. Over time, the house begins to take on a strange air of panic, he says, and it begins to stink pretty bad. Okay, the narrator attributes this to the chemicals, but also to the baths that the doctor insists on taking. He doesn't know what kind of baths they are. He just knows that Munoz takes them and that they must be related to his illness, whatever that is, okay? By this point, Mrs. Herrero won't come near him, and she crosses herself whenever she sees him. Which, I love that.
That's a lot.
Munoz stops eating altogether, okay? He's just getting worse and worse. He stops eating, and it almost seems like he's living on sheer will alone. Okay, this harkens back to what he said before. Maybe a man can live on sheer will alone. The narrator mentions that the doctor might want to see a doctor himself. At that, the old guy flies into a rage. He's like, no way. It almost seems like this is an invocation of his old enemy, death. And the invocation of his old enemy, death, renews him to new purpose. Right. So he starts composing these long documents. He witnesses him writing. He seals them up. He gives them to the narrator with the instruction that they are to be delivered to certain parties after his death. These certain parties include lettered East Indians and a, quote, once celebrated French physician now generally thought dead and about whom the most inconceivable things had been whispered, end quote. This is a great technique to use in fiction. Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentine writer, does this all the time. Just lists stuff or throws stuff out there. And you're like, what? And like a certain French physician now generally thought dead, blah, 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 blah. And it just leaves you with like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, he doesn't go on about it. Now, I have a theory that he could be talking about the Count de Saint-Germain. Okay, this is a guy that crops up in these like new age circles and stuff like that. This is a real guy. He lived in the 1700s and he was like a polymath. He was a musician, a scientist. He was one of these guys that was just, a Renaissance man, I guess you call it, where he's just all over the place. A brilliant mathematician and maybe he dabbled in medicine, who knows? But he was an historian too, and apparently talked about history as if he had actually lived through it. They said, this guy has been living forever. So these rumors started to circulate that this guy was immortal. And some people believe that he never died. Some very strange, idiotic people think that he never died. Yeah. No, it's actually a very cool legend if you look up the Count de Saint-Germain. So that's what I think that Lovecraft is talking about.
And then there's lettered East Indians.
Yeah, lettered East Indians. I'm not sure exactly who they might be.
Like, as opposed to unlettered. I mean,
right, exactly. Yeah.
That's just, is that like him assuming most of them aren't?
It could be. Then again, like I said, I'm not defending, but this is another sign of the times where you had a lot of this Asian exotic stuff. Anything that was vaguely Asian.
True. Like East Indian Trading Company and stuff like that.
Yeah, or anything Egyptian or anything like, anything that was just far away and unreachable was like mystical. It must have been strange and mystical because it's so different. You see that a lot, you see that in the old Universal horror films, The Mummy and stuff like that.
Sure.
Anyway, so he gives all these papers to our narrator to deliver, and the narrator just burns them. So Munoz's voice now and his mannerisms are becoming more and more unbearable. Okay, to say nothing of his appearance. As a matter of fact, an electrician stops by to fix a lamp, takes one look at the doctor, and has a grand mal seizure right on the spot.
Oh my God.
He just drops and has a seizure. That's how ugly Dr. Munoz looks right now. Forget it. I'm just dropping and having a seizure because this is so fucked.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, and that guy was a veteran of the First World War.
He couldn't even handle that.
Yeah.
He's like, no.
My brain's just going to glitch out right now.
Yeah.
All right, so now we come to October, okay? And the cooling unit breaks down. Munoz summons our narrator up to his place by thumping on the floor. It's like, get the fuck up here. The narrator goes up there and tries to fix the pumps himself, but he fails. He can't do it. And the whole time he's trying to fix it, the doctor is just standing there cursing at him. Something dire's taking place here. The narrator summons a repairman, and the repairman's like, you need a piston for this thing. Which reminds me of the Simpsons Stonecutter episode where they need to fix the leak, and the guy's like, that part will take about 6 months to get here or something like that. I just put a pan on the floor. It's just like, meanwhile, the water's like up to their necks.
That's awesome.
So anyway, at this, Munoz flies into a rage. And it's so intense that it actually seems like his body's about to fly apart. It's like a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
Munoz suddenly claps his hands to his eyes, rushes to the bathroom. That's how crazy he is. He's so angry and so enraged that his eyes are about to pop out. So he puts his hands over his eyes. He rushes into the bathroom and he emerges with his eyes tightly bandaged. The narrator says that's the last time he ever saw the doctor's eyes. So then throughout the night, the house is getting warmer and warmer. The doctor disappears into the bathroom with the order that the narrator is to fetch him all the ice he can possibly find. Okay, so this guy goes to every all-night drugstore and cafeteria and returns with a paltry supply of ice, which he lays at the bathroom door and creeps away. He hears Munoz splashing around in the tub and crying out, more, I need more ice.
His splashing around trying to get cool reminded me, I think it's probably in a lot of different movies and stories, but when someone's got a horrible fever, they throw him into a tub or something and start throwing ice all over him.
Jacob's Ladder.
Jacob's Ladder. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
That was a brutal scene.
Yeah, it was.
Like, it's so cold it burns.
Yeah. That movie undid me, by the way.
Yeah, I was all done after that one.
Yeah.
I could not stand it.
Yeah.
I could not stand it.
Anyway.
Yeah, sorry. Everyone should see Jacob's Ladder, the original.
How's your beer, by the way?
Oh, it's good.
Good.
I'm tempted to go get a second.
Okay.
Beer. Sparkling, golden, pure, refreshing. That's the way we, as Americans, like it.
You refilled and ready to go.
Yes, I have a beer. I'm good.
Okay. And my Pilsner is doing wonderful things right now, so that's great.
Yeah, the cold excursion, it grows on you the longer you drink it. The first sip was like, yeah. And now it's like, yes.
Sign of a good beer. I think it's a sign of a good beer. I don't know.
I think so.
Okay. So when we last left Munoz, he was splashing around in the tub. He's crying out for more ice. In the morning, our narrator calls Esteban, who is Mrs. Herrero's son. He calls him to help him out. He says, you fetch the ice while I get the piston. Esteban refuses, thanks to Mom. Mom said, no, you're not going to deal with this guy anymore. Our narrator is now truly desperate. He hires a, quote, seedy-looking loafer, unquote, on the corner of 8th Avenue to help him procure ice. When we go into the city and we're walking back to the train station, we always say, no 8th Avenue, we're not taking 8th Avenue to get back there. You take any other route but 8th Avenue. 8th Avenue is gross. So,
too many seedy-looking loafers hanging around.
Yeah, many seedy-looking loafers. I wear a pair myself. So
nice.
Anyway, he hires this derelict to help him fetch ice while he himself gets the piston and 2 stout mechanics to install it. So it's 1:30 in the afternoon when he returns. He's hoping it's not too late, but when he enters the building, it might be too late. He finds that, quote, fiendish things, end quote, are in the air. Not good when you walk into a building and there's fiendish things in the air. The place is a hot mess. People are chattering. Some people are praying. And there's a nasty smell coming from the doctor's apartment. Ugh. All that's coming from within the doctor's room is a slow, thick, dripping sound. It's slow and thick.
Gross.
Yeah. So the door is locked from within, and the narrator suggests breaking it down, but Mrs. Herrero comes to the rescue, and she improvises a device with a wire in order to turn the key from the inside. This is like straight out of like a locked room murder mystery. They get the door open, and it's blazing with sunlight. They enter with their noses covered with handkerchiefs, and what do they find?
A kind of dark, slimy trail led from the open bathroom door to the hall door, and thence to the desk, where a terrible little pool had accumulated. Something was scrawled there in pencil in an awful blind hand, on a piece of paper hideously smeared, as though by the very claws that traced the hurried last words.
Let's review. Dr. Munoz at some point got out of his tub and left a gross little slug trail, like a gray matter type of slug trail, over to his desk, and was just dripping over there. And then he says,
Then the trail led to the couch and ended unutterably.
That's another Lovecraft hallmark, is to talk about something unspeakable, unutterable, indescribable. Now we get a little suspense about the contents of that note. It kind of lingers on this in the scene a little bit. The narrator says he read it and then immediately took a match to it. There's a nice little contrast of the contents of the note with the sunlight and the clatter of cars from the street below. It seems like it's a pleasant scene, but he read this note, it's like, fuck this, and burned it.
Yeah.
And the narrator says all he knows now, he can't even expound on this anymore. He says all he knows is that he hates the smell of ammonia, and he grows faint at a draft of unusually cold air. That's what's lingering with him to this day. And now we finally get to the contents of the note. It begins, quote, "No more ice. The man looked and ran away. Warmer every minute, and the tissues can't last," end quote. What the fuck is going on? He's obviously writing to the narrator. He reminds him about what he said regarding the will to go on in a preserved body after the organs cease to work. Munoz says it was a good theory, but he couldn't keep it up indefinitely. And here's how we end.
There was a gradual deterioration I had not foreseen. Dr. Torres knew, but the shock killed him. He couldn't stand what he had to do. He had to get me in a strange, dark place when he minded my letter and nursed me back. And the organs never would work again. It had to be done my way, artificial preservation. For you see, I died that time 18 years ago.
So, Munoz has been a walking corpse this entire story. Boom, we're done. These last two Lovecraft stories that we covered, they're good intro, I think, to Lovecraft if anybody's unfamiliar with him as a writer. I think they're good entry points. And you can get into his mythos and everything else gradually. You know, from this, I would say the next one to read would be Call of Cthulhu, The Call of Cthulhu, if you really wanted to start getting into the stuff, and then you can follow the trail from there.
Where would you rank as far as when to read at the Mountains of Madness?
That's a longer story.
Right.
But I would say once you start getting used to his style of writing, with him piling on the adjectives and his very wordy approach, I would say, like, once you're used to that, go to At the Mountains of Madness. It's a great story. And that's a real, everything's in there. All the wonderful mythos is in there, and it's really cool stuff. So anyway, yeah, I would say that once you're used to his style and you just want more, if you find yourself wanting more, go to that At the Mountains of Madness. It's great.
That's why I asked, because I've seen so many people reference it like that's the standard for him.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Sure. And, we're sitting here giggling at stuff that happens in the story. I do think that Lovecraft had a sense of humor about this stuff. And he purposely put this crazy stuff in and was probably just laughing the whole time. There's the story Herbert West Reanimator. Of course, the film Reanimator, based on that story, Herbert West Reanimator. And the editor of the publication that Lovecraft was submitting to told him, you can't make this crazy enough for this magazine. Make it go buck wild with this thing. And so he did. He pulled out all the stuff. So when you read Herbert West Reanimator, it is so fucking crazy. There's all sorts of crap going on in that story, and it's hilarious, because it's so over the top. There's a guy carrying his own head in a bag and stuff like that. It's funny, A little bit of his racism comes out when he's describing black characters and stuff. You just gloss over that, all right, but get to the good stuff. Get to the fun stuff.
Yeah.
There you have it. We did our 2 Lovecraft stories. I'm very happy about them. Good. There's what I loved about pairing these two is that you had this is very similar. It's this guy moving into this building.
Yeah, it did have that same structure.
And then you have a neat little payoff at the end. It's cool. But yeah, I agree with you. The Erich Zahn is better because of the cosmic horror, I think. It's just a more tightly written story anyway, but the cosmic horror aspect is really something in that. Mm-hmm. So there you have it.
It was great.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And your beer held up.
Yeah. Cold Excursion is good. Cold Excursion IPA by Arbor Brewing Company.
Okay.
I like it.
Smoking ice box smelled like Dr. Munoz at the very end. It probably tasted like that little puddle he left.
Yeah. Oh, gross, dude. Gross. Sick. They bottled it and sold
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. I'm going to pair this with a boar cob for dinner.
Don't.
All right, so I think we should wrap it up then. I'm going to pour this bilge water down the drain and hope it doesn't form any
that beer.
nasty things.
Oh, if I ever see an ice beer?
It's an ice bock, but usually I guess ice bocks are supposed to be, supposed to be pretty good. This one's called Smoking Ice.
Smoking ice, more like smoking ass. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good.
I had to gear that one up.
Who would have thought the Germans would be capable of a crime against humanity? But, here it is. Proof of it. Sorry. I'm a quarter German. I can make that
What'd you
joke.
say? How could it be bad if it's German?
There's The Simpsons. Again, another Simpsons reference. You want to talk about The Simpsons? Do you remember the one when old Jasper, froze himself in Apu's freezer?
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking of with Cool Air. Is that he froze himself? He wanted to preserve himself.
Yeah, right.
And so Apu decided to capitalize on it and build him as Frostilicus.
Yeah.
And Grandpa Simpson goes and is like, I shared a bathroom with Frostilicus once. It's a very interesting story. Well, it's not so much interesting as it is long.
That is good.
That's good stuff. All right. Good to end on that note. We're going to wrap it up here.
Nice one.
And that's that. And we'll see you next time, buddy.
Okay, man.
Be good.